Today, I want to share how I lost the best thing in my life due to my greed and the pursuit of something better. I hope my story serves as a reminder to cherish the relationships we have and not constantly seek more. I'm a 26-year-old woman, and I was married to my ex-husband, a 28-year-old man, for 2 years. We tied the knot right after finishing college. We met during our college years, even though we had different majors, thanks to a shared group of friends. Our friendship grew into a romantic relationship, and we eventually decided to get married. Initially, it wasn't meant to be anything serious, just testing the waters. However, as we spent more time together, our love deepened, and marriage became the next step. Our early married life went as smoothly as one could hope for. My ex-husband secured a high-paying job in a corporate setting right after graduation, while I assumed the role of a homemaker. We were still young and felt like we could conquer the world. I had promised to support him in achieving his career dreams, and we believed we could handle anything life threw our way. My ex-husband's job required long hours, and he was determined to make a name for himself in his field. I had initially committed to being an understanding wife, but I failed miserably as he worked late hours. I found myself endlessly scrolling through Instagram, where people my age were enjoying life with their partners, going on trips, and having fun. Meanwhile, I was often in the kitchen waiting for my husband to return home. The disparity began to affect me. I suggested to my ex-husband that we take a break and go on a vacation, but he would promise that we would do it later. He had numerous responsibilities at that point, and he assured me that he would work hard to achieve financial success. We had a comfortable home, but we were still paying off debts, and our standard of living was decent but not lavish. My ex-husband aspired to attain great wealth and success, a goal he had voiced back in college. Initially, I believed that my love for him would make it easy to support his ambitions and share in his journey to achieve the life he desired. I thought I would enjoy the benefits of a luxurious lifestyle alongside him. However, reality proved to be much more challenging. We had just graduated from college, and while we were building our lives, our peers were out there enjoying themselves and showcasing their experiences on social media. I couldn't help but feel envious of their carefree lives, even though I tried to suppress those emotions. Our married life began to be affected by these circumstances. My ex-husband would frequently return late from work, and I'd start sharing what I saw on social media about our friends and other matters. His response usually fell into one of two categories: he'd either ignore my comments or offer brief responses like "oh okay." His reactions irritated me, often leading to arguments, especially when he was already tired. These fights resulted in us not speaking to each other for days, only to eventually start talking again once our anger subsided. I felt like he wasn't recognizing the sacrifices I was making for him, and I wanted him to acknowledge and appreciate them. I brought this up during one of our arguments, which upset him. He explained that he did see my efforts but reminded me that everything he was doing was for our future. Although I didn't enjoy our frequent conflicts, I felt trapped and frustrated within our marriage and home. As a result, my ex-husband and I grew increasingly distant from each other. In hindsight, I realized that I contributed to this distance, but at the time, it was difficult to see. I attributed it mainly to his actions. I resented him for not bridging the gap between us, and our arguments persisted whenever I criticized his post-marriage changes. He would become furious, often storming out of the house in a fit of anger, slamming the door behind him. Our conversations became limited, revolving around household matters or tasks that needed attention. I grew even more frustrated because I believed I was investing so much effort in his success, yet we remained unhappy in our relationship. Days passed without meaningful communication between us. I longed for him to make an effort to talk to me. Then one day, he unexpectedly initiated a conversation during dinner. He mentioned a work-related event, an office party of sorts, and expressed his desire for us to attend together. He smiled, and I returned the gesture. I was thrilled about the prospect of attending a party, even if it was related to his work. The day of the event, I went to have my hair and nails done, which had been overdue. I got ready and left for the party with my husband, feeling excited about the evening ahead. It turned out to be quite a pleasant party. The venue was fantastic, and the decorations were spot on. It was held on the rooftop of a luxurious 5-star hotel with a stunning view of the city. I thoroughly enjoyed being there. It was the first time I had some genuine fun. My husband then introduced me to everyone, including his colleagues, who were all around his age. They were all polite and friendly. This was also the first time I had the chance to meet his boss when my husband introduced us. I couldn't help but keep my eyes on him. He was an incredibly attractive man, slightly older than my husband but undeniably easy on the eyes. He greeted me with a smile and playfully asked my husband how he managed to spend so much time at work when he had such a beautiful wife at home. His compliment caught me off guard, and I couldn't help but feel a tinge of guilt. I hadn't been very understanding lately, and I silently vowed to do better. We mingled with more people and enjoyed drinks with his colleagues. Everything was going smoothly, however, there was something I couldn't ignore. I noticed his boss glancing in our direction more than once. Every time I looked over, it seemed like he was watching me. I brushed off the uneasy feeling in my stomach and tried to focus on enjoying the party. It was indeed a fantastic evening. We returned home around midnight, both exhausted, and quickly fell asleep. The following day, my husband got back to his busy work routine. Despite my efforts to be more understanding, I still struggled with my feelings of irritation and unhappiness. However, I refrained from picking fights with him. Days passed in a similar manner, and while I wasn't exactly content, I made sure we remained civil towards each other. One afternoon, my husband surprised me by announcing that his boss would be coming over for dinner that evening. I was taken aback because I didn't expect this invitation. He explained that it was a casual Friday night conversation, and his boss mentioned wanting to try homemade food in the city, so he extended the invite. He assured me it wouldn't have been a problem if I had declined. I agreed and asked what I should prepare for dinner. He mentioned that he'd come home early to help with preparations and could pick up any groceries I needed. After our call, I began cleaning the house and preparing for dinner. When my husband entered the kitchen, he offered a hand and suggested I get ready while he handled things in the kitchen. I nodded in agreement, knowing I wouldn't meet his boss in sweatpants. I had trouble deciding what to wear. Strangely, I wanted to make a good impression on my husband's boss. It didn't make much sense, but that's how I felt. I got myself ready, applying a natural-looking makeup. When I came downstairs, his boss was already there, holding a bouquet of flowers. As he saw me, he stood up and handed me the bouquet. I was genuinely impressed by his gesture. He was not only handsome but also charming. I smiled at him, and he returned a friendly smile, though I wondered if I was imagining a hint of flirtation. We had dinner together, and he kept complimenting the food, which pleased my husband. Later, he asked for my apple pie recipe because he loved it so much. I agreed and shared my contact information so I could send it to him. The evening went smoothly, and he eventually left. My husband thanked me for arranging everything, and we cleaned up before heading to bed. He had an early workday ahead, so he fell asleep quickly. I stayed up scrolling through social media and received a text from his boss, thanking me for the delicious dinner. My heart raced as I replied, but I quickly ended the conversation as I looked at my husband sleeping beside me. Guilt washed over me for having a crush on his boss. I reminded myself it was just a silly infatuation and eventually drifted off to sleep. A few days later, while my husband was at work, his boss texted me expressing his love for pie and asking for the recipe. I shared it, and our conversation continued beyond that. At the time, it didn't feel wrong. It was just friendly chat with my husband's boss. We kept texting regularly. He was witty and charming, and it was refreshing to engage in such conversations, especially since my husband and I no longer communicated this way. It was a bittersweet feeling, but we continued. My husband was so engrossed in his work that he didn't notice my attention had shifted elsewhere. Strangely, I didn't mind his lack of attention. For the first time, I found myself texting his boss, especially when my husband was at the office. It was puzzling that my husband couldn't make time for me, yet his boss could. I began to wonder if I truly mattered to my husband. Days passed in this manner, and one day I went shopping at the mall. When I asked my husband for money before he left for work, he handed me only a small amount, saying we needed to save due to our home debt and other expenses. It was frustrating. Every time I requested something, he'd bring up the need to save money. At the mall, I unexpectedly bumped into my husband's boss. I hadn't mentioned my plans to be there, so it was a surprise encounter. He asked what I was shopping for, and I casually replied that I was just window shopping. He mentioned he was also feeling bored and had come here to pass the time. He asked if I wanted to hang out, and I agreed. Together, we wandered into various stores, laughing and enjoying each other's company. During our shopping, I spotted a limited edition LV bag that caught my eye. It was way beyond my budget, so I could only gaze at it with desire before reluctantly putting it back on the shelf. However, the boss had noticed my interest and urged me to get the bag. I chuckled and explained that I couldn't afford it. He insisted, assuring me he would take care of the cost. I hesitated, finding it hard to accept such an expensive gift, and I expressed my reservations to him. Undeterred, he struck up a conversation with the salesperson and proceeded to purchase the bag. My jaw dropped in amazement as he casually handed over his card to pay for the USD bag. I was stunned by his generosity and contrasting spending habits. While I came from a middle-class background, used to careful financial planning and minimal spending, he appeared to have no qualms about making such a lavish purchase. He handed me the bag, explaining it was a token of appreciation for the dinner we had shared earlier. Returning home with the bag, I was still in a daze. I had never been accustomed to such extravagant gestures. My admiration for him deepened that day as I entered our house with the bag. My husband noticed it and inquired about my recent purchase. Instead of the joyous reaction I had anticipated, he bombarded me with questions about the bag's cost and the source of the money I used to buy it. Irritated, I decided it was best not to disclose the truth and claimed that I had found it at a thrift store for a bargain price. My husband seemed confused but eventually accepted my explanation, rationalizing that it made sense given our financial situation. I stored the bag in my closet without further discussion. My husband became engrossed in his work once more, and I resumed texting his boss, expressing gratitude for the thoughtful gift. We continued to exchange messages throughout the day, and it felt as though he understood me better than my husband did. Unlike my husband, who had little time and financial constraints, he made an effort to connect with me. I immediately regretted entertaining this thought. The boss displayed a genuine interest in my hobbies and how I spent my time alone at home. Each time I shared something, he listened attentively. One Monday, my husband informed me that his boss had requested him to attend an out-of-town work meeting that evening. He packed his bag, headed to the airport, and left me alone for the night. I found myself in bed texting his boss about my day and other topics. By now, we had developed a sort of friendship. He was 30 years old, single, and lived alone in his upscale apartment. He possessed a great sense of humor, charm, and undeniable attractiveness. He suggested that since I was alone, we could have dinner together the following day. I needed little persuasion and agreed eagerly, curious to see where he would take me for dinner. My husband called me the next day to check on things at home, and I assured him that everything was fine. I debated whether to inform him about the dinner with his boss but ultimately decided against it. I feared he would bombard me with questions, and I wasn't prepared to answer them at the time. I got ready just as the doorbell rang, and his boss stood at the door waiting for me. We made our way to his car and drove to a high-class restaurant. As I had anticipated, we were escorted to a private booth ensuring our privacy. I had mixed emotions about the situation, sitting in a top-tier city restaurant with my husband's boss. I opted not to overanalyze and simply go with the flow. He ordered wine for me, and after a few drinks, our flirting became more direct than it had been in our texts. Experiencing this with him felt refreshing. While my husband used to flirt with me before we married, the responsibilities of life had gradually overshadowed romance. That night, flirting took center stage again, and I savored every moment as I became slightly tipsy. I surprised myself by leaning over and kissing his cheek. Suddenly, we shared a passionate kiss, and it felt exhilarating. I had never imagined kissing someone in such an elegant setting. After a while, as I realized the gravity of what I had done, I pulled away, fully aware of my actions. I began to feel guilty about going behind my husband's back like this. He started comforting me, assuring me that I had done nothing wrong. His comforting words stirred my emotions, and I hugged him once more. Subsequently, he invited me to his house. We both acknowledged the mutual attraction between us. That night, we shared an intimate encounter. I had decided to set aside thoughts of consequences and savor this brief moment of happiness. While I was still at my boss's house, my husband called and informed me he was heading to the airport and would be home in the evening. I replied expressing my eagerness for his return, but immediately regretted my words. The truth was, we no longer felt the same way about each other. Even if he hadn't suspected anything before, he probably did now after our encounter. I reluctantly left my boss's house and got ready to return home, thinking that it might have been a one-time occurrence. I smiled at him to avoid any awkwardness and headed for the door. However, he stopped me before I could leave and inquired about when he would see me again. I was puzzled by his question, but he clarified that he wanted to meet again and that one night wasn't enough. I was pleased that he desired to see me, yet perplexed about how to continue without my husband discovering the truth. I expressed my concerns to him, and he reassured me that he would ensure my husband remained unaware. I believed him because I too wanted to see him again. I knew I was making a wrong choice, but I couldn't resist my desire for this man. He promised to make plans and inform me via text, and we shared another kiss before I departed for home. My husband returned that evening just as I finished cooking his favorite pasta. He appeared content and shared that his work had gone well, possibly leading to a promotion. Although I was happy for him, in the back of my mind, I wondered if he could ever treat me the way his boss did. Even after a promotion, I was deeply conflicted about my actions and questioned the choices I was making in my life. Was it a mistake, or was I seizing a unique opportunity to have fun and enjoy the luxuries I wouldn't experience with my husband? Despite my doubts, I remained resolute in my decision. I believed I deserved to have some fun. I began secretly meeting my husband's boss behind his back. He would text me the location, and I would meet him there while my husband was at work. His boss ensured my husband had a heavy workload so we could spend more time together. I felt a twinge of guilt for causing my husband extra work due to my selfish desires. However, the boss explained that my husband genuinely enjoyed his job, which was true, as he preferred being at work over spending time with me. I let go of my guilt and relished these stolen moments. My husband's boss consistently showered me with expensive gifts, seemingly knowing exactly what would make me happy. Sometimes he would gift me high-end makeup and skincare products from famous brands, while other times he'd take me on impromptu shopping sprees at places like Dior, letting me choose whatever I desired. I thrived on his attention, and I couldn't recall the last time I had been so content. I made sure to hide all the gifts in the closet to ensure my husband never discovered them, as I had no plausible explanation if he did. My boss took care of all my needs, ensuring I got everything I wanted. I also made sure to keep our relationship satisfying in the bedroom. My husband and I had stopped being intimate long before I began my affair, so he didn't suspect anything when I started it. I thought that maybe this could be my ticket to an ideal life. I ceased arguing with my husband because there was no need anymore. I was receiving everything I desired from my boss, and everything seemed to be going well. I wasn't bothered when my husband focused all his attention on work. He no longer got angry with me because I had stopped complaining. It felt like the perfect life I had yearned for. But it all unraveled when I had to confront reality and reckon with my actions. One morning while I was in the kitchen, my husband asked if I had seen his blue tie. I had placed it somewhere in the closet but couldn't recall where exactly. I suggested he searched for it in the closet, and I resumed making breakfast. However, I heard him coming downstairs with a luxury brand bag in hand. He inquired about why there was a Dior scarf in my closet. I was utterly taken aback by his question. I had completely forgotten that I had hidden my gifts in the closet when I told him to look there. I scrambled to come up with a lie and eventually told him it belonged to a friend of mine. I claimed she had asked me to keep it since it was very expensive, and she was moving houses and didn't want it to get damaged or lost. He believed me, and I took the bag from him, promising to return it and find his tie on my way back. I hurriedly checked if he had discovered any other bags, but luckily it was only this one. I considered relocating the gifts to a different hiding spot later, but I forgot about it as I got preoccupied with other matters. One day, the boss and I were headed to an exclusive VIP event. He had received an invitation, and I was accompanying him as his plus one. I had informed my husband that I was meeting a friend to help with packing for her upcoming move to a new house. I explained that it might get late, so I planned to spend the night there and return home the next day. He had no objections and wished me well. I dressed in a stunning Chanel dress, hardly believing my luck. Just a few months ago, I could only window shop because I couldn't afford anything. Now I was wearing Chanel. The evening was enchanting with numerous paparazzi present. It was an art gallery opening featuring a celebrity artist, and various other celebrities were in attendance. Photographers were aplenty, but I paid them no mind. I simply relished the evening. Being around such high-profile individuals was a new experience for me. Later, I accompanied the boss to his home and spent the night there. I returned home the next day around noon, assuming my husband would be at the office. To my surprise, I found him in the living room, engrossed in the newspaper. In a casual tone, I asked why he hadn't gone to the office as I made my way to the kitchen to prepare some coffee for myself. He responded that he was waiting for me, which struck me as odd, but I let it pass. Then he inquired about my night. I replied that it was pleasant. I fabricated a story about helping my friend with packing and so on. As I concluded my tale, my husband entered the kitchen. He appeared angry, but I couldn't discern the reason. Puzzled, I asked him what was wrong. He presented the newspaper, displaying a photo of me in his boss's arms from the gallery. The picture was small, but it was unmistakably me and him. I turned to my husband, ready to explain that it wasn't what it seemed, but the anger in his eyes silenced me. He retrieved the bags I had hidden in the closet, and I had even forgotten to remove the receipts from them. All those receipts were signed by his boss. I was in serious trouble. My husband's anger escalated, and he accused me of stooping so low for fame and money. He then asked me harshly if I had been intimate with his boss. Tears welled up in my eyes, and there was no point in denying that truth, so I simply nodded and wept. He appeared hurt for a moment, then coldly told me to leave his house. He declared that he never wanted to see my deceitful face again. I attempted to approach him, aiming for a hug and an apology, but he stepped back and crossed his arms. He stormed out of the house, emphasizing that he expected me to be gone by the time he returned home. In my desperation, I called up Boston, intending to ask if I could stay at his place for a few days. However, a woman answered his phone. When I inquired about her identity, she revealed that she was his fiancée. This revelation was a shocking jolt. He had led me to believe he was single and living alone in the city. Clearly, the woman on the line was aware of who I was as she berated me for having an affair with her fiancé. Her words left me dumbfounded, and I ended the call. Now, with my husband having kicked me out of our house and my supposed refuge in shambles, I felt utterly lost. Both my husband and the boss had deceived me. Facing homelessness, I sat in my living room, determined to persuade my husband to forgive me. I believed that once he understood the circumstances that led to everything, he might find it in his heart to forgive me, and we could embark on a new chapter in our lives. I anxiously awaited his return, which occurred several hours later, with bloodied knuckles. I inquired about his injuries, but he remained silent. He glared at me with anger in his eyes and demanded to know why I was still there. I fetched the first aid kit and approached him, but when I touched his shoulder, he shoved me away. He proceeded to berate me, expressing how everything had gone awry. He revealed that he had confronted his boss and physically confronted him. Then he disclosed the truth about his fiancée, even mocking me with sarcasm. The player got played, huh? He sneered. He informed me that his fiancée was residing in Canada, engaged in a long-distance relationship with him. He darkly added that she would take him back, leaving me with nowhere to go. I questioned why if she could forgive him he couldn't do the same for me. He chuckled and responded that he wasn't as gullible as her. My husband had actually spoken to his boss's fiancée and persuaded her to forgive her partner. He knew that if she forgave him, he could sever ties with me. He asserted that he wasn't a fool, that he intended to end our relationship while leaving the door open for me to be with his boss. He scrutinized the bags and locked eyes with me, accusing me of cheating on him. For all of this, he laughed as my phone rang. It was his boss calling me. My husband instructed me to answer it. His boss informed me that his fiancée had returned all the gifts, requesting that I return them to their home. I was taken aback but had no alternative. My husband continued to smirk at my predicament. I went to my closet and gathered all the gifts his boss had given me. Upon my return to the living room, my husband informed me that he had already contacted a lawyer and divorce proceedings would soon commence. I pleaded with him for another chance, but he remained unmoved. He labeled me the worst person on the planet and ordered me to vacate the house immediately. She suggested it was best for me to leave their home. Even my closest friend no longer trusted me around her husband, so I left her house and sought refuge at my parents' place. They weren't exactly speaking to me since my husband had revealed the truth, but they allowed me to stay temporarily. Soon, my husband's lawyers contacted me, informing me about the divorce proceedings. I began my job search, but it proved challenging because I lacked experience. I had married right after college, and suddenly I found myself in the lowest point of my life due to greed and desire, losing one of the most significant relationships I ever had. The divorce process commenced surprisingly swiftly, taking only 3 months instead of the year I had expected. During that time, my husband made minimal contact with me, his lawyers handled everything on his behalf, while mine represented my interests. Unfortunately, the court didn't grant me substantial alimony. The facts were overwhelmingly in favor of my husband, and his legal team was highly skilled. My lawyers couldn't do much, and I had already lost everything: my husband, my marriage, and any chance to be with my affair partner, all due to my own actions. I couldn't blame my husband for his reactions to what I had done. It has been a year since my last post, and I've read all your comments. I acknowledged that my mistake was significant. I was young back then, mistakenly thinking that I was missing out on life by staying with my husband. I failed to recognize the importance of his hard work and dedication, a realization that has since dawned on me. I now work as a nanny, even though the pay isn't great, it's better than nothing. I've moved to a studio apartment in a less desirable part of the city. I feel like hope has abandoned me, and I've become the woman who jeopardized her marriage for expensive gifts. Everyone who knows what happened looks at me with disdain. I hang my head in shame, burdened with guilt for my actions. On the other hand, my ex-husband is thriving. He received a job promotion, dresses in expensive suits, and is climbing the ladder of success. I've heard that he's even dating an attractive person now. I'm genuinely happy for him, even though I'm sad for myself. I could have been the one by his side enjoying all the luxuries if only I had the patience to support him during his challenging times. He truly deserves all the success coming his way, while I deserve the pain and shame I feel every day. Can you believe the audacity of this woman? She's literally the epitome of a walking disaster. Married straight out of college to a guy busting his back in a corporate job, and what does she do? Spends her days scrolling through Instagram, getting jealous of her peers' seemingly perfect lives. Talk about misplaced priorities. Her poor husband is out there grinding day and night, and she's at home getting all twisted up because she's not living some fantasy Instagram lifestyle. She even had the nerve to complain about their decent but not lavish living standards. Hello, reality check, lady. Not everyone starts their marriage in a mansion. But wait, it gets Jewishier. She then falls for the oldest trick in the book, getting charmed by her husband's boss at a party. I mean seriously, the guy compliments her once, and she's all star-eyed. And let's not forget how she conveniently forgot to mention the pricey LV bag her husband's boss bought for her. Oh, and she lied about its price, claiming it was a thrift store find. As if it gets better or worse, really. She starts an affair with the boss while her husband is out working. The sheer nerve. And the boss, oh, he's a real piece of work too, buying her gifts, taking her to fancy events. And the worst part? He was engaged the whole time. Talk about a drama-filled soap opera. Honestly, this whole saga is a lesson in what not to do in a marriage. It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. You can't look away, but you know it's not going to end well. She wanted the high life and ended up with nothing. It's a tale of greed, betrayal, and a whole lot of poor choices. Just mind-boggling.